Episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, we are talking about murder in Myrtle Beach, the Brittanee Drexel story. We're going to be diving into this whole case. We're going to be diving into the wrong people trying to be held accountable for this crime. We're going to be talking about what it's like for a mother to go through so much hurt and a whirlwind of who's right, who's wrong, who did it, who did not. So we're going to be diving into this full story. Well, no more talking. Let's get into it, my friends. Myrtle Beach is a coastal city on the east coast of the United States in Horry County, South Carolina. It is located in the center of a long and continuous 60-mile stretch of beach known as the Grand Strand in northeastern South Carolina. Myrtle Beach is one of the major cities, one of the major centers of tourism in South Carolina and the United States. The city's warm subtropical climate, miles of beaches, 86 golf courses, and 1,800 restaurants attract over 20 million visitors each year, making Myrtle Beach one of the most visited destinations in the country. It's a very popular spring break destination for families with school-aged children. Brittanee Drexel was born in Rochester, New York on October 7th, 1991, to John Kayaglu, who was of Turkish descent, and her mother, Dawn. The two were teens and not married. Shortly after Brittanee was born, Dawn married Chad Drexel, who would later adopt little girl at that time named Brittanee, of course. After Chad's military service ended, the family lived in the Rochester suburb of Chile, New York. Now, Drexel, she was born with a persistent hyperplastic primary vitreous in her right eye, which required several surgeries and rendered the eye blind. To cover the eye's tendency to wander, she wore contact lenses that gave her a distinctive appearance. In April 2009, Brittanee asked her mother if she could go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina over spring break with her boyfriend and some friends. Myrtle Beach is a very popular area among spring breakers. That is a very populated area every year, right around the same time, by a lot of high school and college kids. Her mother refused since she did not know the other teenagers and there were no accompanying adults on the trip. She also had a premonition that something bad would happen. This led to arguments between the two for several days until April 22nd, when Brittanee asked if she could go to a friend's house for a day or two to calm down, to which Dawn agreed. That day, Brittanee left for South Carolina with the other students without telling her mother. 3 days later, after she and her group had arrived at the Bar Harbor Hotel in Myrtle Beach, Brittanee called her mother once during the daytime and told her mother that she was at the beach. Her mother, she wasn't alarmed, as she assumed that Brittanee had been referring to a beach along the Lake Ontario shoreline in New York. A trip there seemed plausible to her since the temperature in the Rochester area had reached an unseasonable high of 83 degrees in the area that day. That night, around 8 p.m., Drexel left her friends at the Bar Harbor Hotel beachfront to walk just 1.5 miles south down South Ocean Boulevard to visit a longtime friend who was staying at the Blue Water Resort. Security cameras showed her arriving. She was carrying a beige purse and wearing a black and white tank top, flip-flops, and shorts. Now, the cameras captured her leaving around 8:45 p.m. Drexel was texting her boyfriend, John Greco, who had stayed in the Rochester area because of work commitments. They had been texting back and forth, but around 9:15 p.m., her text suddenly stopped and Greco began calling her friends in Myrtle Beach to see if they knew where she was or what had happened. When those efforts failed, he called Brittanee's mother, Dawn, who had not known that her daughter was in Myrtle Beach until she was contacted. Dawn then called Chad, and then she called the Rochester police, hoping that they could establish communications with their counterparts in South Carolina. Now, repeated calls and texts to Brittanee's phone went unanswered. On April 26, 2009, Myrtle Beach police began urgent search efforts that last for months. That same day, Raymond Moody is pulled over for a traffic violation in Surfside Beach and issued a speeding ticket. There was no sign of Brittanee at all around him at that time. They located the security camera footage from the Blue Water Resort and found the friends whom she had visited. The last person who had reported seeing Drexel before she had left was identified as Peter Brazowitz, a 20-year-old nightclub promoter whom Brittanee had known from the Rochester area and who also was vacationing in the Myrtle Beach area. They had apparently met at a local nightclub the night before. After police interviewed Brazowitz and the men with whom he was sharing his hotel rooms, they said that no one has been ruled in or out, adding that they did not have any persons of interest at that time. Police searched Drexel's hotel room, finding all of the clothes she had packed, but not her purse or cell phone. The phone's network pings were tracked on a path leading 50 to 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach in an area along US Route 17 near the Georgetown-Charleston County line. The pings had stopped abruptly early on the morning of April 26. Areas near there and around Myrtle Beach where a body might have been disposed of were then searched for 11 days. In February of that year, detectives investigating the case revealed that a convicted child rapist is a person of interest in Drexel's case. Let me correct myself. I believe that's in 2012 when police had shared that. So in February of 2012, detectives investigating the case revealed that a convicted child rapist is a person of interest in Drexel's disappearance. Police said Raymond Moody, a registered level 3 sex offender, was in the Myrtle Beach area the same weekend that the teenager had vanished. Now, Moody was issued a speeding ticket in Surfside, a town in between Myrtle Beach and Georgetown County, the day after Brittanee disappeared in 2009. Now, his previous run-ins with the law were significantly more violent, and he is classified as a level 3 sex offender. Moody spent 21 years in prison stemming back to a 1983 abduction and rape case of a 9-year-old California girl and was considered the suspect in a number of similar rapes but was never charged. You will want to stick around to the end because the 9-year-old at that time, as a grown adult, she shares her feelings about this terrible ordeal. In August, however, Georgetown County Police conducted an extremely thorough investigation of apartment number 22. This is in August of 2011 in an area motel called Sunset Lodge. The convicted sex offender Raymond Moody, 51 years old at that time, checked into that room on April 24th, 2009. And this is the day before Brittanee disappeared. Police say we cannot eliminate him as a person of interest. And this is according to the Myrtle Beach police captain, Joe Vella, who tells Fox News that information. Now, Dawn and Brazowitz had several confrontations on the television show Dr. Phil, during which Brazowitz often expressed frustration at the damage to his reputation. I do want to share right here, this is what happens when a lot of people get behind a theory. Before you know it, people all start pointing fingers at Brazowitz, who at the time didn't have anything to do with it. He continued to stress. Even here, he's like, you're ruining my reputation, putting this blame. She came to visit me, she left, that's it. But since he is the last known person to had eyes on her, he became a very strong person of interest. Even Dawn pointed fingers at him. And so that is what happens when a lot of people start getting behind a theory. Then before you know it, more people start jumping on this theory. And as someone who does true crime, I try to be very careful not to jump on a story too soon until more information comes out, because I can guarantee you a lot of people were hounding this dude as to where is Brittanee. Again, hindsight is 2020. This guy had nothing to do with it. Dawn, who had driven to Myrtle Beach the day after her daughter's disappearance, eventually relocated there permanently to be close to where Brittanee had been last seen, and better monitor the progress of the investigation. In a 2014 newspaper article on the case's 5th anniversary, Dawn expressed her theory that Brittanee had defied her to go to Myrtle Beach because she had been promised something of interest, such as a modeling job. Dawn believed that her daughter had been trafficked, but the Myrtle Beach police did not believe this was a strong possibility due to their claim of little or no trafficking taking place in their jurisdiction. Now, let it be known that a 2019 report conducted by the South Carolina Human Trafficking Task Force, they rated Horry County as the #1 county in South Carolina for reported human trafficking victims. And being that, again, spring break brings a lot of young kids. They bring kids with the family. They bring a lot of college students. They bring a lot of high school students, just as in this case. And so, interesting that you hear one thing and then boom, you hear another. And so, 3 years after the disappearance of Brittanee Drexel in 2012, her mystery disappearance, the family of Brittanee Drexel have released an age-progressed sketch in the hope of that their daughter is still alive and the picture will jog people's memories. And the 17-year-old high school junior from Rochester, New York, was last seen leaving a popular Myrtle Beach hotel along Ocean Boulevard in April 2009. She had traveled to South Carolina with friends, but without her mother's permission, and a camera at the Blue Water Resort videoed her leaving the hotel on April 25th at close to 9 p.m. The police in Myrtle Beach have said they believe that Drexel was abducted as she walked the 1-mile stretch of Ocean Boulevard that lies between the two hotels. Her mother, Dawn, at the time maintained that her friends know more than they are letting on. She says, I'm convinced they know more than they're saying, she said to Fox News. They will not speak with me. To this day, not one person that was with my daughter contacted me to help. They showed no empathy. There's a lot of reasons why those kids would not, they're probably feeling guilty. They probably even feel a little to blame because they drove her here. And so they're probably feeling really guilty and shame. I mean, I still feel like maybe they should offer condolences. Maybe they did. Maybe that was it and they didn't, they probably felt very guilty. So then you think about her sharing this with the news. What is that going to make you think? The friends know more than they're letting on. Hindsight is 2020. They knew nothing. But this is what I mean. When someone hurts, they start placing like fingers, 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 which is very hard when fingers are pointing at you when in something you had nothing to do with. And that's a feeling I know the feeling of as well. It's a terrible, terrible feeling. And so here you have the friends literally didn't know anything. Again, hindsight is 2020. And so in June 2016, the FBI held a news conference during which they stated that they believed that Drexel had been murdered shortly after her disappearance. She had been abducted from Myrtle Beach and taken to somewhere in the vicinity of Georgetown, near where the cell phone pings had ended before being killed there. The Bureau put up a reward for information leading to the resolution of the case. 2 months later, the Charleston Post and Courier reported new developments from a bond hearing for Timothy Deshaun Taylor, an inmate then serving time in state prison on an unrelated charge. FBI agent Garrick Munoz testified that earlier that year, Taquan Brown, another South Carolina inmate who had begun serving a 25-year sentence for manslaughter, told them that in 2009, shortly after Drexel disappeared, he had gone to visit a McClellanville stash house to give money to Taylor's father. As he walked through the house, Brown had told Munoz he saw Taylor sexually abusing Drexel with others present. He continued to the backyard where he found Sean and made his payment. As they talked, Drexel ran from the house but was soon recaptured. Brown said he saw Taylor pistol whip Drexel, then take her back inside. He then heard 2 gunshots, which he assumed were the sounds of the young woman being killed. Brown claims to have seen a wrapped body being removed from the house, then dumped in one of many alligator ponds in the area. Because of them saying this, in March 2017, authorities searched a wooded area along a dirt road in Georgetown called Foxfire Court. No indication is given about what they find. There would be a 3-day search after investigators combed a wooded area for leads in the case of Brittanee Marie Drexel, who was allegedly gang raped, murdered, then fed to alligators in 2009. And they say this is where the investigation has taken us, FBI Supervisory Agent Don Wood said of the quiet, rural, wooded area near Foxfire Court in Georgetown County, South Carolina. And this is according to the Democrat and Chronicle. Now, Brown's statement to investigators, Munoz said, was partially corroborated by information received from another informant who was not identified but was described as having been incarcerated at the time at the Georgetown County Jail at the time he had talked to authorities. Now, according to the second inmate, Taylor had picked up Drexel in Myrtle Beach and taken her to McClellanville, where he showed her off to friends and tried to sell her to them for trafficking purposes. Brown said that when the case drew heavy media attention, Taylor decided to kill Drexel to avoid arrest. The bond hearing had been held after Taylor's arrest on a federal indictment for interfering in interstate commerce by threat or violence. This is a charge stemming from his role as the getaway driver in a 2011 robbery of a McDonald's restaurant in Mount Pleasant. Unusually, he had already been convicted for his involvement in the crime in state court and had been sentenced to probation, which he had finished by the time of the federal charges. Taylor's lawyer called the new charge a squeeze based on nothing more than a statement of two jailed informants. His mother called them craziness since she believed that her son and husband could never commit such a crime. Winston Holliday, the federal prosecutor at the hearing, admitted to the judge that the suspicions in the Drexel case were among the government's reasons for having brought the new charge for the conduct South Carolina had already sentenced Taylor for. Now, in response to questions of whether this amounted to double jeopardy, Holliday, seen in this picture, he cited a federal law that states that the federal government may bring charges for a crime if it believes the state prosecution led to an unfair outcome. In this case, Holliday noted that the other two participants in the robbery had both been sentenced to prison with the gunman who shot the restaurant's cashier twice, serving a 25-year minimum term. Now, in the summer of 2016, believing what these people had said in jail, the FBI revealed that Drexel had been raped, murdered, and left in an alligator pit in McClellanville, about an hour from the hotel, where she is believed to have been held in a house for at least 3 days. And on Friday, October 7, 2016, Dawn and Chad Drexel appeared on Dr. Phil, sharing for the first time information they have received about what happened to their daughter. No charges had ever been filed to that point. Mrs. Drexel said she was sobbing when she was told by investigators what they believe happened to Brittanee. Her body had not been found up to that point, and police didn't think it ever will be. And they say Brittanee tried to escape, and they ran out and got her and brought her back into the house and pistol whipped her and beat her and shot her. This is according to Dawn Drexel, the victim's mother would say on Dr. Phil. And here is another prime example. She goes on Dr. Phil and shares this. What do you think this large audience of Dr. Phil's going to believe? They're going to believe what they just shared, which was not really true. But they believed this was true. Other people had already believed this was true. And now this guy who had already served his time was now dealing with more problems because one person said he did it, everyone believed it. This is why the justice system is not always fair, because all fingers were pointing to Taylor at this time. You had FBI who had a press conference confirming this is what they believed happened. What do you think is going to happen to Taylor? All eyeballs are now pointing at him. Again, hindsight is 2020. He had nothing to do with this. Let's continue with the story. Now, Brittanee Drexel's dad, he literally thought and said on the show, I had firsthand knowledge of the suspect, referring to Taylor. Now, in June 2017, as part of his plea bargain negotiations, Taylor took a lie detector test. Some answers to the polygraph were labeled deceptive by the FBI. According to the federal government sentencing memorandum, the only possible knowledge of the case to which Taylor admitted involved having overheard part of an argument between two people over who had Drexel's cell phone, a discussion that he said had made him suspicious. But when Taylor was connected to the lie detector, and asked whether he had seen Drexel after her disappearance or if he knew who was involved, the examiner determined he was not being truthful. And under the plea agreement, he would thus face at least 10 years in prison for his role in the 2011 robbery. Now, after reviewing the results with Taylor's lawyer, the examiner attempted to continue, but Taylor was too angry to do so. Before the sentencing hearing was scheduled, Taylor was found to have violated the terms of his bail and was held in Charleston County Jail. In August, presiding federal district judge David C. Norton ordered Taylor's bail reinstated on the condition that he remain on house arrest until the U.S. Supreme Court decided the case of Gamble versus United States, a constitutional challenge to the dual sovereignty doctrine, which allows separate state and federal prosecutions for the same criminal offense. Now, the development pleased activists who had been attempting to draw national attention to what they considered to be a witch hunt. In June 2019, the Supreme Court decided Gamble in favor of the government, upholding dual sovereignty and allowing the federal government to proceed with its case against Taylor. 6 months later, Norton sentenced Taylor to serve. 6 months later, Norton sentenced Taylor to time served 319 days after a guilty plea forced by his similar disposition in state court. In February 2019, Brown gave a telephone interview to Rochester station WHEC TV from McCormick Correctional Institution, where he was incarcerated. And he said he had actually seen Drexel 4 times after her disappearance, in addition to the first encounter. Brown said he had seen her again a month later, and it was at that time she was killed. Brown said he saw Drexel being sexually assaulted by a group of 8 to 12 young men at the McClellanville stash house on April 27th, 2 days after her disappearance. He did not recognize her at the time, but realized who she was a month later when publicity arose surrounding the case. Brown's second encounter with Drexel came a few days later. This was the event that he had described to the FBI, with the gunshots inside the building and the body being carried out in a rug. Now, Brown claimed his third encounter was 5 days later when he saw Drexel on a lightly traveled dirt road near his cousin's residence in Jacksonboro, which is 80 miles south of McClellanville. Now, Brown claimed to have seen Drexel for the last time in late May, once again on his cousin's property while visiting with another friend. Now, in a wooded area at the rear of the property, Brown claimed to have witnessed Drexel being murdered by a man whom Brown knew only as Nate, who shot her twice with a double-barrel shotgun. Brown and his friend left immediately, fearing being considered as accomplices if they had remained. WHEC was able to partially corroborate Brown's account. His description of the McClellandville stash house matched the station's own reporting from a 2016 visit. Now, his account of the second visit, when he believed Drexel had been shot, is consistent with his original story as told to the FBI. Now, the station was unable to locate the friend whom Brown said had accompanied him on the last visit. The cousin who owned the property where Drexel was purportedly killed is now dead, and another witness whom Brown had named could not be found. Brown has filed suit against Munoz, Holiday, and other federal officials whom he says had identified him publicly or played a role in doing so. And he said by doing so, he alleges they gave him a reputation as a snitch and put his life in danger. Brown says that Taylor has offered a bounty to anyone who kills Brown and that he has already been assaulted. Well, considering that now we know that you were either seeing the completely wrong girl and you just wanted either more, you try to get a lighter sentence. I don't know what you were trying to do, Mr. Brown, but again, hindsight is 2020. They probably released your information because you gave the wrong information. And you try to throw someone else under the bus who had nothing to do with this. And so, Brown, you probably caused this on your own. So, on May 4th, Raymond Moody, on May 4th of 2022, we would finally get some answers. Raymond Moody is arrested and booked into the Georgetown County Jail on an obstruction of justice charge and is given a bond. Officials refuse to comment on the details of Moody's arrest. WMBF tried to obtain the documents from the magistrate's office and was referred to the Georgetown County Sheriff's Office. Now, a spokesperson for the office told their reporters that he could not provide a reason for not providing documents related to Moody, as a reason would be too revealing. 8 days later, authorities announced the discovery of human remains in a wooded area 2.5 miles from where Moody had been living when Drexel disappeared. Her body was found Wednesday, May 11th, 2022 in Georgetown County, about 35 miles down the coast from where she disappeared. Dental records back and DNA testing confirmed her identity. And one of the ways that helped them identify Moody with the timing is the GPA, the GPS. What they notice is 1 second she is walking at walking pace. Next minute she's moving at about 55 mile per hour pace. They were able to tie her GPS with his movements as well. And that was one of the things that, boom, you were right there, right in that area when she now is going 55 miles an hour. And Moody, who has an extensive sex offender history, he had been a target of this investigation dating back to 2011 but he wasn't arrested until May of 2022. And the local sheriff, Myrtle Beach Police Chief, FBI agent in charge of South Carolina, and solicitor all said little about what helped them crack Drexel's case after 13 years of wild rumors that included stash houses for sexual abuse victims' bodies to be fed to alligators and rumored links to other missing women. And one of the things that I also believed helped was his girlfriend, Angel. They got her, they talked to her, she opened up and shared. And I think that was another one of the coming to Jesus moments for him that helped break this case open. And officials, they did not explain how they linked the ex-con to the missing teen, but they said charges against him were made possible through investigative findings and evidence leading to the site where she was buried. Police found Drexel's remains in a gated private drive on the outskirts of Georgetown on May 11, 2022, after a flurry of tips. An investigation that included Moody's arrest May 4th on an obstruction of justice charge. Now, at that time, Moody was charged with murder, rape, and kidnapping in connection to Brittanee's death. Drexel's body was turned over to her family, and now they can get a lot more answers in peace. Now, one of the previous victims of Brittanee Drexel's alleged killer, the sex offender who was previously convicted for raping 7 underage girls, has stepped forward to describe the horror she suffered after being kidnapped and sexually abused by him back in 1983. Carrie Harding, now 48 years old, also expressed her outrage that Raymond Moody, who raped her when she was just 8 years old, was allowed out of prison after serving just under half of the 42-year sentence he received for sexually assaulting her and 6 other girls in Vallejo, California. He only served 21 of those 42 years. Moody, now 62, was released in 2004. In an interview with the U.S. Sun, Harding said, "That's what hurts me so deeply, because Brittanee would still be with us today if he was kept behind bars." Harding said that she's still haunted by the words he uttered to her when she was 8 years old. "Let's get in the back. We're going to screw." At the time, Moody was 23 years old. To this day, those exact words haunt her. I can completely understand. He says to this little girl who's 8 years old at the time, "Let's get in the back. We're going to screw." That's some sick, sick stuff. I'm glad she found the strength to come forward. The mother of the murdered teenager, Brittanee Drexel, has blasted her killer during an emotional sentencing hearing. Dawn Placan said she hopes sex offender Raymond Moody is haunted by what he did to her when she disappeared from Myrtle Beach 13 years ago. She told him he will carry the scars of what my daughter did to you. After the courtroom heard, she scratched the hell out of his head. Moody, 62, will spend the rest of his life in prison for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of the New York teen Brittanee. Drexel's mother, Dawn Placan, told him, "I am so glad my daughter was feisty. She fought back. She fought for her life. We know now she scratched the hell out of your head, face, and neck. You will forever carry the scars of what my daughter did to you. And I hope you are haunted by what you did to her." And he said He said, this is Dawn when she is speaking, and he said, I served 20 years and I thought it was enough, but it wasn't. I was a monster then, and I was a monster when I took Brittanee Drexel's life. I don't have the words to express how horrible I feel, and I have felt ever since that day. He says, I'm very sorry. After Moody pleaded guilty in court, Judge Farrell Cothran Jr. sentenced him to consecutive terms of 30 years on the charges of kidnapping and criminal sexual conduct and a life sentence on the murder charge. The judge then told Moody, that act that you did was horrific, adding that he gave up a lot of people's long-term happiness for your immediate pleasure. For 13 years, Drexel's parents, Dawn Placan and Chad Drexel, searched for her. On Wednesday, they were emotional as they spoke directly to her killer. 13 years later, I found out the horrible, disgusting, senseless way she was murdered. That is what Chad Drexel would say. Brittanee's adoptive father. Every part of my being wants to say and do something about that, but my heart knows that I will not, and Brittanee would not want me to go to jail over that. And a memorial tree honoring Drexel was planted in Grand Park near Myrtle Beach in 2012. And the family has been hurting over this ever since. And you know, as you can see, I don't know, it looks like Dawn and her husband may have split because it looks like she had a different last name than Drexel. And at one time, Dawn was Drexel. But I got to give credit to the stepdad because it sounds like he stayed in her life and looking for her till this day that justice was. And he was the adoptive father. And he hurt and looked for this little girl, tried to find answers for years. And through all of this, he loved her to the very last day. Good man right there. Good man. My friends, I'm Manny Rodriguez, and this is the story of Murdered in Myrtle Beach, the Brittanee Drexel story. My friends, if this is the type of content you like to follow, please hit that subscribe button, click on that like, and if you got some value, that like helps YouTube know, show it to more people. And my friends, if you're willing to support this channel, check out the description. I would be grateful if you bought me a cup of coffee because you appreciate the efforts of what I'm doing here. My goal is to serve the victims. My goal is to serve the audience because at the end of the day, I want you to know what could go so wrong out there. If you have a teenager, this might be a story you want to share with them because she did what teenagers do. They disobey their parents sometimes. Now, this was a big one because she left the state. 17. I remember when I was 17, I felt like I could make my own decisions. I was a dad at 17, to be honest with you. You know, I was a kid having a kid thinking I could make the right decisions. I was definitely wrong because I wasn't ready to make those adult decisions. So I share, this is a story that you should share with your teenager because this is what could happen if you think that things will be okay and then all of a sudden it's not. Because truth is, if little Brittanee didn't go against her mom's wishes as teenagers do, she might still be here today. Does this mean that she deserved this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But the more you know, the more prepared you can be. And that's the goal here. It's keep you aware of what could go wrong to help you not commit that movement that could go wrong. A lot of times I do think of worst case scenario because of stories like this. Oh, what if I drive down here when, maybe my whatever, I can't think of a story off the top of my head, but there's those moments where it's like, yeah, if you do that, maybe something go wrong. Maybe you should have stayed home. I could think of something. I go out when the snow is so high. My wife's like, don't, it's slippery out there. And I ride my bike out there. Nothing happens. But what if something did? Then I should have followed my wife's wishes, right? My friends, that's why I do this, because to hopefully help you be a little more prepared, a little more aware, a little more alert of what could go wrong in this crazy world we live in. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to serving you again. My friends, be safe out there, because here is my thought process. These are the things that could go wrong. And at the end of the day, we just want to know, hey, let's be more prepared, because this is a scary world. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to serving you again. Peace. Have a great day.